Kevin McCarthy's losing streak in a third day. Now, 10 consecutive defeats, 10 lost votes, and the humiliation that's come with that here in front of the whole nation. Tonight, we begin with how we got here, because everyone's been absorbing the days now of chaos, headlines about the failure of the Republican majority to get its work started in its new Congress, a story that really goes beyond politics, and it's reaching people who don't always follow the swearing in or the speaker's race. So if you approach this with fresh eyes, as many Americans have, saying what's going on over there, you might actually wonder why the big and chaotic fight right now that continues with these rolling losses for Republicans, why is it happening at the finish line of a win for the GOP in the midterms? And why is the big fight in Washington within one party, not between what are the typically warring factions between parties? Well, there are many factors, but three reasons loom large. First, a crop of Republicans who are more focused on hijacking than governing. Second, this Trump internet industrial complex that puts the content, the trolling, all the internet theatrics above the real world we live in. And third, the sheer math in the Republican Party's red fizzle this November. No wave, no large majority, no way to mathematically overwhelm this band of now effective hijackers. So as we begin tonight, where we were yesterday and the day before with these Republican problems, I'm just going to go through this briefly with you before we bring in our experts. On the hijackers, they are a small share of the Republican Party's caucus in the House, but they are willing to upend everything. You know, Bush White House veteran David Frum stressed the key point when he joined us this week, that while leverage and bargaining are typical parts of politics, we know that, what is different here is these Republicans who do not want something in return for the hijacking. They just want to keep hijacking.
What if there's nothing you want? What happens if you say to the hostage taker, why did you take the hostage? What can we give you to redeem the hostage? And the hostage taker says, I like having hostages.
I like hostages. That's my thing, quote unquote, as Frum puts it. So McCarthy has been in a position, at least 3 days running, 10 votes in, 10 big defeats, the 10th just being officialized in the last few moments, where he doesn't feel he can offer them much of anything if that's their position. Then the content. Take Republican Matt Gaetz, who's been leading this from the start as a performance. He's used Trumpian internet tactics against McCarthy and then this week against Trump himself. He trolled McCarthy for moving into the speaker's office prematurely. It's all been building on trends that have been brewing for over a decade and riding a media wave where viral politics and internet followings can overrule even, say, Fox News. And that's a contrast that's actually been on display because Fox elites have been blasting these GOP defectors, which only sharpens the rift that actually first formed with the so-called Tea Party, an anti-Obama wave that then morphed into an anti-Boehner, anti-GOP leadership wave. That Tea Party group, which was the kind of baseline for what we're seeing explode this week, they made Boehner's life hell. And they had demands that were more about the show than any reality or any governing, and definitely any vote counting. Now, Boehner was conservative, he was anti-Obama, but he would publicly complain he was forced to negotiate in fantasy land as he hit those Republican detractors.
Frankly, I just think that they've lost all credibility.
They had no cred with him, but their content was riling up part of the base, and their chaos was thrilling to some. It threw sand in the gears of the hated federal government until it could fail, as Boehner described their mission. And that Tea Party faction falsely claimed, for example, that they could end Obamacare by just shutting down the government. That was a lie. Reopening even a shuttered government does not cancel or wipe out existing federal health care laws. And just about everybody knew that. And Boehner said those hijackers knew it and later admitted it.
They pushed us into this fight to defund Obamacare and to shut down the government. Most of you know, my members know, that wasn't exactly the strategy that I had in mind. But if you'll recall, the day before the government reopened, one of the people at one of these groups stood up and said, well, we never really thought it would work. Are you kidding me?
Never thought it would work because it couldn't work, because it wasn't how it works. You saw Boehner there really letting it ride and letting it go and saying, hey, are you kidding me? Now, Boehner was talking that way when he had the margin to win the speakership without those defectors. And that brings us to the third and final point in my introduction for you tonight, which is the math and November's fizzle of any red wave, which could have saved McCarthy on paper in the numbers, because we can count. Consider, when Boehner first won the speakership, he had 12 Republicans voting against him. That number actually doubled to 24 Republicans voting against Boehner when he was reelected for that speakership. So that is a critical comparison. Boehner could win with these 24 defectors because the Republican margin was large then. For all the attacks on McCarthy, and he's certainly shown weakness and problems and a lack of strategy or much of a plan B, 10 failed votes in, if McCarthy had stumbled into this majority with one as large as Boehner's, well, he'd have the math to be speaker right now. He started the week, count it up, with 19 no's. That's grown up to about 21 no's against McCarthy as of tonight. Again, still a smaller number than the margin that Boehner had. But McCarthy looks weaker because the GOP is so much weaker right now. They blew their touted red wave with a historically terrible showing in November. We all remember watching Kornacki at the board walking through the fact that it wasn't any kind of wave, a fizzle born of extreme candidates and political malpractice. And they really bucked trends that usually favor the opposition party. That fizzle is the reason that McCarthy is going through his living hell of Groundhog Day this week. Now, at times, that historical context may have gotten lost. Boehner would have been stopped with exactly this kind of thin margin. So if you're looking at this and saying McCarthy is so much worse at doing this than Boehner, that's actually a math thing, not a leadership thing. Now, Boehner's opponents ultimately did oust him, and his successors, we should remember, fared even worse. There was a member of his leadership team, Eric Cantor, who lost to a rookie in a Republican primary. There was the much vaunted Paul Ryan, who found that his speakership was hobbled by the same extreme wing to the point that it was barely worth holding the job. He resigned after just 2 years, a faster exit than Boehner. The political lesson for these content-driven hostage takers has been to emulate the basically supposed monsters who win. Frankenstein leading to even more mini Frankensteins. That's how the Boston Globe put it today. A bunch of mini Frankensteins. So you take it all together here tonight as McCarthy lives through his 10th public drubbing. And I'll tell you, this is one of those times where both things are true. This is about right now and the extremism that's gotten to this pitch and its efficacy and McCarthy's apparent inability to deal with it or have any plan B and just kind of go, let's do it again, night after night. You know what we should do on Thursday? Let's have a 10th public humiliation. Let's do that on Thursday. What's going to happen Friday? Could be an 11th. That's part of it. But the other thing is also true. Rick Ross used to say some things are deeper than rap. This is deeper than this moment or Kevin McCarthy or even these defectors. It runs to a kind of rot at the core of part of the Republican Party. And that is not stated as an opinion. The reason that so many Republicans are angry is that they, like critics of the Republican Party, are now living with the actual anti-governing, anti-democracy, anti-rational wing of this party. And for the three reasons I told you tonight, they are in a very real sense somewhat in charge until they're not.